I'm going to tell you a story, and we're going to start with the mundane. A few years ago, I invited someone to my Figma workspace, but they didn't accept the invitation. Figma charged me anyway. Then I learned something else. If that person has their own account, Figma charges both of us. Now, I like Figma. It's a good product. That's why the billing system threw me off. I use Slack too. And every month, Slack sends me an email with all the inactive accounts on my system. It's like a friendly reminder telling me that I'm paying for something that I shouldn't be. A brand is not what it says. It's what its systems do. The corporation was originally designed around this concept. Behave in a way that benefits society, and in exchange, you receive limited liability. It was a contract. And at the heart of the contract, at the heart of all contracts, is value given, value received. In fact, if you and I signed a contract right now where you gave me £1 million and I give you nothing in exchange, it would be invalid. Value exchange is fundamental. When a system is designed to extract value from people who are not paying attention, it isn't value exchange, it's taking. And people feel that, even when they can't name it, even when they stay around. You learn more about a brand from its billing system than you do from its campaign. For the last 20 years, brands have competed for a split second of attention, a scroll, a click, a page view, a like. Entire organizations built around winning those fleeting moments, and it worked. People were hooked. And the numbers were growing. You can buy your way in front of anyone and call that a relationship. But the relationship was rented. The moment you stopped paying or the algorithm changed, the audience was gone. Brands were showing up on someone else's platform, someone else's rules, someone else's business. And those platforms decided everything. Who sees your content, when they see it, how often. And the system had its own logic. It rewarded whatever kept people scrolling. So people optimized for that. Not for trust, not for loyalty, not for value, for clicks. In a world optimized for attention, the system rewarded noise. So everyone kept making more noise. The value inverted. Hailey Bieber, she didn't build a skincare product and then earn an audience. She built an audience, then launched the brand. The product was almost beside the point. The person with the most attention wins in commerce, in culture, and in politics. That's the world we built. I came to the internet by way of theater. And in theater, just like in life, character is built through action. An audience understands your character by your actions. What you say doesn't matter, it's what you do. So for example, if we're in a scene together and I'm trying to get you to stay and you're trying to leave, well, if I get you flowers, I'm romantic. If I fall to my knees, I'm desperate. If I lock the door and hide your keys, I'm a monster. Same objective, different action, different character. In the mid-90s, the internet became my new stage, an interactive space where the audience became an active participant. Monologue became dialogue, where expression happens through interaction. A world where the best brands wouldn't be the loudest, they'd be the ones that showed up consistently, honestly, in a way that made the relationship better as time went on. Showing up isn't just about being seen or being heard, it's about being there when it matters. It's what remains when the campaign is over and somebody still needs you. It's the brand that behaves consistently, even in the moments nobody designed for. That kind of showing up has a name: presence. Presence is being genuinely, consequentially there when somebody needs you. And most organizations want that. They just can't deliver it. The brand team writes the guidelines, the product team designs the interface, the engineering team builds systems, the support team handles frustration, and nobody is handling the behavior in between them. That gap between what a brand stands for and what actually happens when the customer needs something is the brand. Not the guidelines, not the campaign, what actually happened in the exchange. Closing that gap at scale has always been difficult, not because the organization doesn't care, but because the distance between what an organization stands for and what actually happens across every touch point, every unscripted moment, every system, it's just too wide to close with intention alone. For over a century, humans couldn't close it. What if the thing that finally does isn't human? This is a story about a problem that we've been trying to avoid for over a century, and whether we'll finally solve it or keep finding new ways to defer it. Brands have always known that trust is built through behavior, not expression. The Quaker merchants of the 19th century built loyalty through conduct, fair prices, honest wages, and consistent quality. The mark on the tin was a promise backed by action. And medieval guild marks, they worked the same way. A seal meant someone was accountable for what was inside. You remove the behavior, and the mark meant nothing. Value given, value received. As industrialization scaled organizations beyond what individuals could govern, behavior became harder to manage directly. The 20th century reached for a substitute, the campaign. Brand and behavior started to diverge. The contract eventually dissolved, quietly at first. Then, in 1970, Milton Friedman declared, "The social responsibility of business is to increase its profits, period." But the subject kept coming back. Throughout the 80s and 90s, there was a push to reunite brand and behavior. Marketers argued that organizations signaled who they are through action, and that a brand is a pattern of behavior, not a stylistic veneer. These ideas were celebrated, but they often stayed theoretical. Then, the internet arrived. Behavior became visible. Every interaction left a trace. The gap between what a brand said and what they actually did was suddenly legible to anyone paying attention. I proudly told my clients, actions speak louder than words, and in an interactive space, it's the interactions that define the brand. And in the Clue Train Manifesto, they proclaimed, "Markets are conversations, and conversations reveal character." They argued that the current homogenized voice of business will seem as contrived and artificial as the language of the 18th century French court. For a moment, it looked as if transparency would force organizations to align what they said with what they did. But social media gave another path. Likes replaced behavior as proof of value, and followers replaced trust as proof of credibility. Throughout history, the answer kept being the same. Behavior is the brand, yet we found new ways to avoid it. Each time, the industry chose the appearance of presence over the reality of it. Why, after everything we know about behavior and trust, is it so hard to get right? Are brands evil? Most organizations have arrived at the same answer. Couple what you do with what you say. Make your brand your behavior, and your behavior your brand. The answer was never the problem. Of course, some leaders don't have any interest in behaving, and Friedman gave them cover. But most leaders that I've worked with are not in that category. They care. They just struggle to align what they believe in with the systems of their organization. Every attempt to close it has treated it as something you can learn. Train the people, write the guidelines, declare the values. But coherent behavior isn't something you learn. It's something systems produce. Before industrialization, a craftsperson sensed, made, and learned in one motion. They observed the material, they shaped it, and then they adapted accordingly. The craftsperson had presence because the conditions made it possible, or rather impossible, to separate their values from their actions. Then, Industrializations changed the conditions. Sensing moved to analysts, making moved to workers, and learning moved to managers. And what we gained in efficiency, we lost in intelligence. The people who sense can't act on what they detect. The people who act can't influence direction based off what they see. And the people who learn can't change what happens next. Why sense what won't be acted on? Why act when the outcome won't be felt? And why learn when it won't change direction? And so good judgment degrades, control fills the gap, and values are laid to rest in documents. When a moment arrives that nobody designed for, the system produces incoherence. Not because anyone chose it, but because nobody designed the conditions that would have made it possible to prevent it. You know, it still amazes me. I've been in this industry for 30 years, and since the beginning, marketers have always said that they wanted to build relationships with customers, yet they send every marketing email from a no-reply email address. The message says, "We value your feedback," but the system says, "Please don't." That's how incoherence works. Not because anyone made a bad decision. The values were declared, but nobody owned the behavior between the message and the response. The system produced exactly what it was built to produce: efficiency at the expense of coherence. Now, scale often gets blamed for this. Scale makes it harder, but scale's not the problem. I mean, there's plenty of companies that have closed the gap. Patagonia is one of them. And not through extraordinary values, but through maintaining the conditions that let intelligence flow through the organization. That's when people have a shared understanding of why signals matter, the power to act on those signals, and the space to fail and learn. Shared context, authority to act, unfiltered feedback. When intelligence flows, behavior holds. These are the conditions that make presence possible, and they need to be designed. Behavior is a system. Systems don't behave well by accident. A system left undesigned doesn't stay neutral. It drifts towards whatever the structure rewards. The real promise of the intelligence era isn't artificial intelligence. It's the return of human intelligence to the places where value is created. AI is changing what it costs to leave human intelligence contained. The gap has always been there, but now it's becoming harder to defer. You see, before AI, a brand with an incoherent system could sometimes survive on expression. The story arrives before the evidence. The campaign shapes the frame. The gap was real, but it was manageable. Expression still could get there first, but now that's changing. For most of marketing history, brands broadcast. The job was simple: get the right message in front of the right people at the right time. The customer encountered those messages and formed a conclusion. Now, with social media, the algorithm decided what spread. The brand didn't just need a good message, they needed one that could stop the scroll. The customer still formed their own conclusions, but it was influenced by the algorithm. Now with AI, a customer, they ask a question, and they receive a single answer, already assembled, already interpreted, already weighed against alternatives. Before the customer barely thought about it, part of the conclusion is already formed by the machine. For the first time, part of the decision-making process is happening outside of the customer's brain. Brands can try to influence the machine the way they influence customers, with messagings, with campaigns, with carefully crafted expression. But the machine doesn't respond the way humans do. A human can be moved by a story and make an irrational decision, like buying a fourth pair of running shoes because it's going to make you 3 seconds faster. Sure, A machine can read expression too, and they can even understand feelings, but as a claim to be weighed against the evidence in order to draw a conclusion, in order to make a recommendation. The instrument that built brands for a century, expression, is meeting a reader it wasn't designed for. In the past, a brand's job was to shape perception. Now the job is to establish the evidence the machine can read coherently. That's presence, a behavioral record that compounds until both humans and machines know exactly what the brand stands for. With each era, brands lost control of something. Ironically, the one thing that is left is a thing that mattered all along. Now, don't get me wrong, expression is still important. The customer still brings emotions and preferences and points of view to the conclusion. The machine's not making the full conclusion. It's just that behavior is taking the lead, and behavioral evidence is specific. The pricing model, the return policy, the complaints and the accolades, the accumulated evidence of what the brand stands for through all of its actions. And yet, the first instinct is still to optimize for visibility with sponsored answers and sponsored questions. The problem is, you can buy your way into an answer, you just can't buy your way into a recommendation. Nike is named in 91% of athletic wear answers, but recommended in only 28. Nike built one of the most powerful expression engines in history, but they can't buy away a 63-point gap between being named and being recommended. So, if the machine prioritizes behavioral evidence, maybe AI can help brands close the gap at scale. I think it will, but not for the reasons you may think. Not because the technology is powerful, not because it expands human capacity, not because you can optimize for it, because it changes the incentive. For the first time, good behavior is not only the right thing to do, it's the most powerful strategy. The machine rewards evidence, which means the brands that behave will show up differently than the brands that don't. This was written in 1999, that most marketing programs are based on the fear that markets might see what's really going on inside the company. The internet gave us a look behind the curtain. AI is removing the curtain altogether. Okay, if this is true, why does the world seem to be moving in the opposite direction? Enshittification is real. The products we love have gotten worse. DEI is being rolled back. Corporate social responsibility is in retreat. Some of the most successful companies in the world appear to be extracting more value and returning less in exchange. So how can I stand here and argue that behavior is becoming more important? Because I'm not making a moral argument. I'm making an economic one. The brands rolling back purpose commitments are making a short-term bet that expression can outrun behavior. That bet worked for a long time. The argument that I'm making is not that it's right or that it's wrong, it's that it's becoming a worse bet. You see, every era rewards a different organizational behavior. Broadcast rewarded consistency, social media rewarded attention. Attention rewards evidence, and behavior is evidence. I started working on the internet in the 1990s. It was an optimistic time. The Berlin Wall fell. The Cold War ended. Palestine and Israel committed to peace. As the internet emerged, promoting transparency and democratic values, the world's problems seemed solvable. We believed that transparency would defeat corruption, that access to information would create equality, that connection would develop empathy. The work felt vital, urgent, almost heroic. I didn't leave theater for a corporate job. I left it for a world where the audience can talk back, where expression became interaction, where trust is earned through behavior, where brands have presence. That was the promise. And I still believe it. Not because technology is inherently good, it's not. Not because information systems are moral, they're not. They amplify what spreads. And what spreads is not always wise or just. We were wrong about that, but we were right about something more fundamental. That systems reveal character through behavior. For most of the last century, organizations could create distance between what they said and what they did. A campaign could arrive before the experience. A story could arrive before the evidence. Expression could sometimes outrun behavior. That's becoming harder. Not because people changed, not because companies are becoming more ethical, because the systems around us are becoming better at evaluating behavior. The product quality, the service experience, the billing model, the small decisions nobody put in the brand book. The moment someone needs something, that moment is becoming the most valuable moment a brand can design for. That's where brands become real. Presence starts from within the organization. Change the incentives, create the conditions, and see how far your values can travel. I started this story with a story about a billing system that charged me for something I shouldn't have been paying for. It wasn't because of the money. It's because in that single interaction, it told me what the organization valued. That's how brands reveal themselves, not when they're presenting, not when they're advertising, and not when they're performing. When someone needs something, and the organization either shows up or it doesn't. In a world of AI-mediated decisions, attention gets you noticed. Behavior gets you chosen. That's what trust is. That's what presence is. And unlike attention, it can't be rented. Thank you.